Hi, we're on our fourth of 5 lessons in Unit 5 on HTML. In this lesson, we'll learn how to do some styling of various HTML elements. Styling means changing the appearance, the location, the size, the color, and so on, to something customizable instead of using the default that your web browser puts on that particular element. Now there's more than one way to change style in HTML. Here in 5D we'll talk about simple styling element by element, which is going to work fine for a small website. In 5E you're going to learn about cascading style sheets, which is actually a better way to go if you're going to be doing something with a very large website with lots and lots of tags, lots of pages, or if you're doing things where more than one person is involved in building your website. But we'll do the simple styling here. We'll learn about fonts and colors and sizes and so on in 5D. So let's get going right now. So all of the styling we're going to do in this lesson is going to be by adding the style equals attribute or parameter to any HTML tag to modify the style of that particular element. That means that I can put a style equals inside a P, a paragraph tag, or inside the body tag, or inside an A for, remember the A was the hyperlink tag, or a list item tag, or a table data tag. We can add style equals anywhere. When we do it, the syntax of style equals is style equals, and then we have quote marks, and inside the quote marks we have a parameter, colon, value, semicolon. Then maybe we want another parameter, colon, value, semicolon. Maybe we want a third one or a fourth one. You can have any number of pairs of parameter and value. Each parameter is separated from the value by a colon and ends with a semicolon, even the last one. And you don't put space around the colon. You could put a space after the semicolon. The syntax is very important. Generally, what's going to happen if you get it wrong, your web browser will just ignore it. Won't tell you there's a mistake. It'll just ignore it. You can add as many parameter value pairs as you want, separate them with colons, end each one with a semicolon. So here's a few examples. Maybe you wanted to change the background color of your entire body. So the entire page of the web page. You have body, style equals, quote, background hyphen color, colon, cyan, semicolon, question or quotation mark, and then we end the body tag. This says for everything inside this tag, the body tag, all the way up until we see /body at the end of our HTML, the background color is going to be the color cyan, sort of a light blue. We could change the style for a particular paragraph. We could do it by saying style equals color red, font size 16 point. We could change the style of an H3, a heading tag, to font family Arial instead of whatever the default font is on our browser. We can change the style of a table to make it width 100%. That means make the table take up the entire width of a page in the browser instead of just enough room to fit the characters in our table data items. So those are just a few examples. Now let's see how we do some of these. Color is one of the things you might want to change. Every element in HTML has both a color and a background color. The color is the foreground, it's the text. The background color is the background, everything that doesn't have text or image or some other content in it. So you can specify the color, you can specify the background color. You can specify them by name. If you specify them by name, there's some names that are real obvious, like red and blue and gray and yellow and black. There's some that are modified, like light gray, there's a light blue, there's a dark red. There's some that are, more fancy colors like fuchsia. And then there's some that are really long names like medium sea green. There are hundreds of these. You're never going to remember them all. For a list, you can look at this link, and I'm going to go to it in a second. www.w3schools, that's World Wide Web schools.com. That's a great site to learn about HTML. CSSRef, CSF colornames.asp. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go over to where I pulled it up in my browser. CSS color names. These color names are supported in every single browser. Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer, Edge, whatever one you're using. If you put these color names in, it'll work. Some of them are colors that you've heard of, like beige. Some are colors you haven't heard of, like bisque. Some have really weird names, like burly wood or blanched almond, or one of my favorites down here, papaya whip. I have no idea what I would think papaya whip looks like, but apparently it's this lightish pink color. Not much different than peach puff. Apparently this is the color of Peru. Olive drab, olive. You might find a color in here that you want to use because you think it's just exactly what you want in your website. Or maybe you just think it's a cute name and you want to use that. Up to you. Let me go find our slides again. Nope, not there, not there. Here we are. So, if you can find a color name that has the color you want, use it. But colors can also be specified by using the RGB, the red, green, blue model. You can specify how much of each from a scale of 0 to 255, where 0 is no red, 255 is all the red that's possible, 0 is no green, 255 is all the green that's possible, and so on. So that's 1 byte for each color. So if you give 3 numbers, the first one will be for red, the second for green, the third for blue. So if you wanted the color red, you'd say, give me all the red, none of the green, and none of the blue. So that'd be a 255, a 0, and a 0. This gives you 255, actually it should be 256 to the third, because you could put a 0 in, or over 16 million colors. Now to use this model, we don't put in 3 numbers like 128, 250, 14. We change those numbers to hexadecimal and we string them all together. The biggest number you can get in 1 byte of hexadecimal is FF. That's the number 255. The smallest is 00. That's the number 0. So this one, FF0000, says all the red, none of the green, none of the blue. That's the color red. Here's the color green. Here's the color blue. None of anything gives me the color black. All red, all blue, all green gives me white. Half of each gives me gray. Here's the color for light pink. Here's the color for saddle brown. So if you find something that you think is close to what you want to tweak it a little bit, have fun. Go for it. Now, here's some examples on how we do this. Let's see what I've done here. This is the complete HTML for a web page. And I've got the body, end body, but I've added style equals background color light gray. So everything in the body, unless I tell it otherwise, all of this from up here down to here is going to be light gray in the background. Then I've got a paragraph where I've said style is color FF00FF. So what color is that going to be? Red, no green, blue. Red and blue together is violet. So the text of this is violet. The next paragraph, I've changed the background color. The body had a background color of light gray, but I've overridden it for just this one paragraph to make the background color yellow, and I made the foreground color blue. So you're going to be able to make changes like that on your web page. Now let's learn how to work with fonts. Some of the attributes you can use to change the font of an HTML element are font-family and font-size. Font families would be the name of a font if it's available to the browser of whoever is running your website. Some examples: Verdana, Arial, Serif, Sans Serif. There's quite a few of them. Experiment with them, see what works for you. Font size, some examples you can completely specify it like you would in a word processor as 16 point or 12 point or 24 point. Notice I don't have any space in between the number and the units. Or, and this is a better thing to do, specify it as a percentage of whatever the default size would be for that element. So maybe you've got something that has a default size where everything around you is 16 point, and you go to 125% of that, you're going to get 1/4 bigger than that. The reason that this percent works better is because people have different size screens. Maybe they'll be looking at your website on their phone. Maybe they'll be looking at it on a laptop. Maybe they'll be looking at it on a machine with a great big huge 20-inch monitor. And you might want to make it so that your website scaled nicely for whatever the default is for that particular piece of equipment that they're looking at. So font family, font size. Here's an example of using it. The body style, we made font size of 16 point. So everything in the body, unless I override it, is going to have 16 point type. The default is smaller than 16 point on most browsers, so this is going to make something fairly big and easy to read even if you're as old as Mr. Ingrassia. Then I've got a paragraph where I've changed the font family to Verdana. So this one has a different font than the default for my browser. But I didn't change the size. So it stays at whatever the body font size is, that's 16 point. The next paragraph, I'm not changing the font family, so it's whatever my default is. You can see that looks different than this. And I want it to be 125%. So the default of 16 point, this is going to be 25% bigger than that. Okay, easy enough. Now, let's learn about two tags that do nothing. Or do they? Dun dun dun! One of these tags is the division tag. One of them is the span tag. Each of them have their corresponding end tag, so div/div, span/span. Div surrounds other tags into a division. It does absolutely nothing to the appearance. I could put a div and a /div around 3 paragraphs, or around a table, or around part of a list, or around every single thing that's inside the body of my HTML. It does nothing. Divisions are block elements. It means they're separated from other elements by line breaks. And a span is just like a div, except they're inline elements. They don't force something to be on another line. So you might want to use it for 1 or 2 words in the middle of a paragraph of text. Now, if div and span don't do anything, why would we use them? Well, here I'm just going to prove that they don't do anything. I've got my body here. I've got 1 paragraph. I've got another paragraph. I've got a 3rd paragraph. I put the first 2 paragraphs inside a division, a div and an end div. My 3rd paragraph is not within the division. Inside the 2nd paragraph, I took the very last sentence and put that within a span. You can't tell that I did it. It does nothing. So why do we do it? Because I can style the div or the span instead of having to style multiple paragraphs or multiple words or multiple list items. So the only thing I changed here, I added style equals, and I changed the font and the color for this division. That'll change paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, but not paragraph 3, to use the Arial font color blue. The span, I said, make the background color yellow and make the font 150% of what it otherwise would have been. So this is background color of yellow just for this part of the paragraph. With a span, it doesn't force it onto a new line. A division forces things onto a new line. And I notice that the font is bigger. And then the 3rd paragraph isn't within the div. It doesn't get any of the styling. So div and span do nothing unless you style them. And if you do style them, they can be helpful. We might want to change the size of an element. You can set the height and width of elements either in pixels or percentage of the available area. There are other ways you can change it, but these are the only 2 that we're going to look at. We'd say style equals height 100 pixels, width 50 pixels. I can do it specifically in pixels. Take this and make it 100 pixels high, 50 pixels wide. Maybe I want to do that with a table or something, and make each of my table data items be a block that's exactly the same size. Or I can do something like width or height equals a percent. If I do that, it takes whatever's the available amount of could have gone into. Width equals 50%, if I'm doing that in a paragraph, says only keep the text on the left side of the page. Only use 50% of it. Let's see some examples. One will be with paragraphs, the other with a table. So, this is the first paragraph. I've given it a width of 75%, so it takes 75% of the available space, no matter how I size my browser window. So here my browser window was this wide. Here my browser window was wider. I didn't change the HTML. This is just the same page being displayed, and I stretched the screen. Notice on this paragraph, I made the width 75%. So it took up 3/4 the amount of space here, took up 3/4 the amount of space here. The second paragraph, I said, give me 200 pixels, no matter what. 200 pixels the first time was about 75%. 200 pixels over here was only about half the size. Up to you which is more appropriate. And here's some stuff with tables. Table, I've got a table row that has headers column 1, column 2, data row 1, or row 2, column 1, row 2, column 2, and so on. And not shown here, but like we did in a previous video, I put a border in up above in the style section of the header, so that you could see where these cells are in the table. So, without doing anything at all with styling, this is what the table looks like. Now, I changed the HTML, only the part in red is different. Style equals width of 100%. So the whole table is going to take 100% of the width of my browser, not only the amount that I need to type in all of this data. So it's going to, the whole table is going to go this far. The table header that I'm using in column 1 is going to take 75% of it. So that's going to mean that column 1 has to be 75%, leaving only 25% for column 2. I didn't change any of the others, but since tables are in a grid-like fashion, since it knew it needed this much room, it gave everything in that column that much room. You can make your tables look a little nicer. So, what are you going to do with this? You're going to style your hobby website. You're going to start with the website that you submitted for assignment 5C. So you've already done this. You're going to modify it by using features that we just went over. So you have to make the following modifications at a minimum. I mean, you can go crazy and change every word to a different color. You'll go blind looking at it. Or you can just try and make it look nicer now that you know how to do some things. But at a minimum, I want to make sure you know how to change the font family and the font size. So I want to see some change there. You could change all the text, you could change just some of it. I want to see you change the color and the background color of some elements. I want you to change the height and or the width of some elements. You've got to change height and width somewhere. It could be height and width on the same thing, could be height on one, width on something else. Up to you, whatever looks best for your website. And you've got to use at least one div and at least one span tag, and actually apply style to the div, apply style to the span. And just like you did for assignment 5C, you're going to package all of this stuff up into one zip file and submit it to me that has all of the files I need to run your website so that I can grade it for you. All right, get going, have fun.